2014 Nissan Pathfinder. I'm dealing with a airbag code. It's B00A0-87 and -88 communication errors. Had a good time figuring this car out, and there's a couple of reasons. One is I got to use my scope, and I look forward to it when I get to get my scope out. It just makes the job more interesting. And two is I have never scoped any signal on this system before this vehicle. And the key takeaway is, just because I work at a dealership, that doesn't mean the strategies and things that I use aren't valid for any other vehicle out there. As long as you have good information, good tooling, and a little bit of common sense, you can figure the stuff out. And I felt like when I was involved with this system, the information in the service information is very vague. They don't give you a lot of voltages and waveforms to compare to, which is kind of good and bad. It's good because it makes you think. It's bad because the service manual just simply says replace, 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 and if that doesn't work, then replace again and put it on. You know, it just it's a crazy mess. But using what I've learned over the years, using a scope, using a little bit of this thing right here between the ears, believe it or not, I was able to figure this thing out. I know I work at the dealer, but through all of my videos, I try to draw a picture of a strategy of how to figure things out. I can assure you, just because I've worked for Nissan for 20 plus years, they do not teach you in any factory training that I've had, and I've been to all of it, how to pull a scope out, look for a communication error between an occupant classification sensor module and a airbag module. Not in any curriculum. Pull the scope out, back probe lightly. Remember, you are working on an airbag system, so even more common sense. Look at what the scope's telling you, look at what you've known, and then just start comparing. You'll see the signals that I'm getting. I have no clue as to what an airbag occupant sensor detection module communication line. I have no idea what that sensor signal is supposed to look like. But what I do know is what I saw was not a digital signal. It wasn't ones and zeros like all communication should be. I don't care if you're working on a Ford or a Chevrolet or a Nissan or whatever you guys work on. Communication is ones and zeros. If you have garbage that looks like old 2-wire AC crank sensors or wheel speed sensors, that is not communication. Plain and simple. Get to the bottom of it, whether you have a bad connection that you created or the car has a bad connection. That's what this video is about. I thought it was kind of neat. The problem I found was a pain in the ass to get to, but I videoed it, and I'm going to do my best to try to present it for you guys. So stay tuned. Don't forget about the Autonerdz link. It's in the description box. We had a great group therapy meeting last March 16th. The next month's meeting is April 20th, 4/20. Easy to remember. I think we're going to go over charging systems and things like that. So if you're interested and you want to become a member, click the link, go to the website, research. If you can't find what you're looking for, call them. 2014 Pathfinder, Nissan Pathfinder. I'm dealing with occupant detection communication errors, and even if I erase these errors, they're hard. Nissan has a whole bunch of bulletins and some recalls and all kinds of mess out for this, and I can assure you, I think all of it's been done. This car comes to me from another dealer and from another tech in my shop. So basically what it boils down to is this little box uses inputs from some sensors on the rails and has to give that information back to the main control unit, which is under here, under the cup holders. I have a communication error, so what I've done, let me get you guys focused. That damn light. So what I've done is I can unplug this box and we can go right back up here to clear DTCs. And the codes don't change. So I'm not going to chase seat sensors or anything like that. I have a comm line that's broken between the airbag controller under the center and this little box down here. I have already checked powers and grounds, and that's good. So I'm going to get the wiring diagram out, and I'm going to figure out which one of these connectors is easiest to get to, and that's where I'm headed next. Almost forgot whose channel I was for a minute. Forgot to show you guys the Pico capture. And what I'm doing is I'm just back probed right here, using the old 4423 as usual. And from this distance it doesn't look bad. I've never scoped this signal before, so I'm not exactly sure what it should look like. But if I stop the scope and I come up here and I zoom in some, I'm gonna have to put you guys down. Hang on, more shaking. Let's see, let's do it like this. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and man, this thing gets ugly quick. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but I'm thinking that's not it. This thing does not even come to 0. I have plenty of sample rate on the screen. It's not a sample rate issue. So I got a bad connection somewhere, and I'm going to find it, and I will bring you guys in once I do. So here's our system. The little black box you see me fumbling with under the passenger seat is right there. Pretty standard little box. It has a power, a ground. It has a data link. I did not check this. I'm not sure what to see there. And then there are 2 sensors that are mounted to the inside of the passenger side seat rail. And they kind of monitor, you know, the weight of the person's car seat. It's kind of secret stuff. I don't know what the thresholds are. But at the end of the video, after I've shown you everything, I'm going to do a little extra. So if you hang around, what I did was I've actually monitored the signal on one of these, the voltage signal. I can't remember which one I was looking at. And I was looking at the communication line while I was getting in and out of the seat. And I made an attempt to decode it. I learned a lot by just exploring things. So that's one thing I did. I suspect that this system works more off of current than voltage. I did not put a current clamp, or I've got an ultra low current clamp. I didn't get it out. I was kind of running out of time. I'd kind of played enough with this. But I'll revisit that one day. But anyway, the first capture you see is, I'm basically back probed right there at number 19, which is ACU, Airbag Control Unit Communication. Like, I have never checked this signal before ever, so I don't know what to expect. So what I'm thinking in my head, just like any control units, this guy, the airbag control unit, the main controller, is sending out some sort of a digital signal, and it's going to look for some sort of response. Hello? Hello? Hey, I'm here. Anybody in the seat? No. Anybody in the seat? No. Anybody in the seat? Yes. I have no clues what these signals look like, but I'm going to stick the back probe right there. And of course, in the video, you saw how crappy that signal looked. And that, to me, going back to what I was saying before, anybody who's looked at any communication at all knows that this crappy signal which I'm going to bring up right now, it is not a communication signal. So what I did is, because I did not know how fast this signal was, I went ahead and I loaded this scope for bear, meaning I've got 200 milliseconds to division, which that means I have a 2-second screen. When it starts this trace, there's 2 seconds on my screen. I'm asking for 10 million samples. So this is my calculator over here. There are 10 million samples on this screen, which means there are 5 million samples a second. So I have 2 seconds on the screen. So I have 5 million samples here, and I have 5 million samples here. And in order to achieve that, these signals have to be sampled at 200 nanoseconds. Like I said, guys, when I set the scope up for this first capture, I was loaded for bear. There is no way that this signal is going to be faster than this setting right here, but I wasn't sure. Goes back to common sense. I'm not sure what I'm looking for, but I'm positive that this setup is going to teach me or show me what I am or am not seeing. So from a distance, it looks good. So let's zoom in a little. Still doesn't look too bad. I'm not crazy about this, where it's starting this voltage at. 3.5, 3.7. I'm like, all right, but this is something I haven't ever tested before, so I'm still keeping an open mind. So I zoom in a little more, I zoom in a little more. Now it's starting to look a little. Now when I get to this point, guys, this is not ones and zeros. This is a bad connection. I have back probed, I don't know, thousands of times, and every now and then you don't get the back probe in there right, and you end up with something that looks like this, a bad connection. I double, triple, and quadruple checked my connection to make sure that I was not causing this before I set out on the mission to find the problem with this car. Once I was assured that my connections were proper, this car has a problem. I know I've seen bad connections hundreds of times, and it's kind of like a snowflake. They always don't look the same, but they always look crappy. I'm pretty certain I should be seeing a square wave signal, and I don't know what this is. This is crap is what this is. So I have a hard fault for communication. I've got a communication signal that looks like that. I am sold that I need to go start searching for this thing. So I'm back probed here. The very first connector I go to is really easy to get to. So Murphy's Law says that is not where the problem is. Well, I know that this guy is under the center console, and looking at the diagram and the pictures and all that, this is going to be under the console too. So I might as well go here before I go here. So in my search for this connector, that's going to kind of cue me into the next video. So you guys hang on a minute. Let me get that thing up. All right, we can see the waveforms changed. So in the pursuit of me looking for this next connector, let me find a light. So basically the connector runs from the airbag controller, which is down there, and it dips under the carpet right there and runs along. And while I had my hand under here looking for the connector, my signal changed, and I was able to feel, and I think my connector comes up out from under the carpet under this blower assembly. So that's where I'm headed to next. But this is looking more like a digital signal that I would expect for any sort of communication. So I'm going to pursue this next connector, and I will bring you guys back when I find it. Alright guys, this is going to be tough, so bear with me. see on the end right there, yellow, blue, and pink. Well, the blue wire is my COM wire that comes from my OCS, which is that way, goes through here, which goes under here to the airbag controller, which is that way. So the middle wire, now I don't have a very expensive GoPro, so it might not focus, but the middle wire down in there, you can see the wire on the end is corroded. The middle one's broke about halfway off. That's my wire that I've got to fix. And the other end, which would be over here on this side, is, you probably can't tell, but it's pretty green and nasty. So I got to solder in 3 pins, 3 female pins, 3 male pins to get this car fixed. I don't know what the other 2 wires go to, but I'm going to fix them while I'm here. Alright, so there's my good data packets. I tried to change the screen a little bit to help some of the glare, but that's my good data packets. I'm going to go over that, and the occupant detection system is working fine. I'm going to focus you on the airbag. Now I'm going to set in it, and notice the light went out. And over here, we don't have any lights on other than the master warning of the door being open. So, had a good time with this little video. I do have a capture with a red trace of me getting in and out of the seat, and I'm going to decode that a little bit, and maybe we can be able to tell if the message changed. If I can get that done, maybe we'll do that as a little bonus at the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. Alright, so this concludes the case study. So in a nutshell, what I've taken is a 2014 Pathfinder. I have examined a system that I've never scoped before. I used a good scope, a little bit of brain juice, and some decent service information, and I was able to ID the problem and ultimately find the problem and fix it. So the key takeaway is that, you know, this could have been a Chevy, it could have been a Toyota or Mazda. It doesn't matter to me. It is an approach, a strategy, and using a couple of basic tools and being able to get to the end of it. I hope this makes sense and, you know, the point that I'm trying to convey. So with that being said, this case study is closed. Now I want to start going over some of the experimenting that I've done. Disclaimer, everything that I'm going to say or talk about is simply observation, speculation, and how I think the system's working. So if you want a little bit of insight into my twisted little brain and the things that keeps me up late at night, stay tuned. So this side over here is basically nothing in the seat, and the airbag controller is asking for information and is receiving information. That's this side. I've unplugged the little module under the passenger seat, and that represents this side. So the first thing I notice is every roughly 200 milliseconds, the main controller says, "Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing?" So on and so forth. And I've put a small decoder on this. I'm not going to get into the decoder that I'm using. Well, it says it right there, but I'm not 100% sure that's right. I believe this is a K-line. I don't know that for a fact, and I know you can manipulate a UART decoder protocol to find some information out. It's the change in the information that I'm after, not really the accuracy of the numbers. So we're on this side. The OCS module is unplugged. And I'm just going to zoom in So first off, let me get the decoding up. Now this is totally unscripted, so I'm just going to kind of, you know, freely go out this. So we have a bunch of 08As. And so I'm thinking that 08A is the airbag controller knocking on the door. Hello, hello, hello. And it's not getting a response. So if I go farther over here, when the OCS module is back online and talking, and notice my first signal is 08A. And if you also notice, the first signal is 08A, the next data is 02A. Now I don't know what that means, but I do know there's nothing in this seat. And then it says 02A, and then it says 02A, and then 200 milliseconds later, it asks for that information again. So the first data pack in each sequence is the airbag controller looking for information. The next three is the OCS module providing information. I think its only job is to say something in the seat, something not in the seat. Because if I scroll in tighter, you'll see this data is all O2As. The responses are all O2A. So if I look down here in this area, you get an 08 and then a couple of 02s and then another 08 and then 3 02s and another 08, so on and so forth. I guess that's the only information that it sends. So I took it a step farther, and let's look at this capture. Now the red trace here is me getting in and out of the seat. This I'm back probed at one of the pressure sensors on the seat rail. So when it's low, nothing's in the seat. Then you can kind of see the voltage increase. That's me kind of getting situated and setting in the seat. And then in this area, I'm actually in the seat, and then obviously I get back out of the seat in here. And this is kind of what I find interesting. So let's start out here. This should be our 02A, 08, 02, 02. So basically, nobody's in the seat. We go in here in the middle. I've done sat in the seat, you know, for a few seconds. There's our 08. Now we got an 019. So 019 represents weight or me in the seat. So the data's clearly changed. And then when we get back out here, our inputs are back to our 02. So now why anybody would need to know this is beyond me, but these are the things that I just love to set and reverse engineer. So I'm bringing you guys along. So I'm just going to go right at about the peak, kind of once I climb in the seat. And I'm just going to put a cursor out here. I'm going to go back into my settings, and I'm basically going to have this thing read between the rulers versus the whole buffer. And I want to scroll up. And remember, 19s are me in the seat, and 02s are me out of the seat. So I'm curious as how long it takes by the time I get in the seat for this thing to recognize my weight. So I'm going to roll on down until I start seeing a change. Now I'm looking over here. Okay, so there's a 19 right there, right around packet 18. So I'm going to double click on 18, and I'm going to move my cursor out. I'm just going to put it right there, and I'm going to zoom back out. So this cursor represents packet 1 now, and this cursor represents packet 26. So I'm gonna kind of just tighten this thing up a little bit. And let's see. Wrong. I moved the wrong one. Let me move that back. And let's move it in here. So I've got a bunch of O2s. So I've got O2s, which is seat empty, to O19s right around packet 18. So let me keep moving this in. So there's packet 22. Let me move it in a little bit more. Right about O2. I mean, I'm going to call that close enough. So roughly by the time I climb in that seat to the time the data changes is a little under a second. That's, you know, relatively fast. I guess it has to make some judgments, start shooting that info back to the main SRS module. So let's just call it 1 second. I mean, why not? So now I want to go over here, and roughly when I kind of get out of the seat, you can see how the voltages dive down. I'm kind of curious when it goes back. I'm just going to start at 2 seconds. So I've got 19s. That means I'm still in the seat. Okay, so I need to go farther out. Let's go 3 seconds. I don't have any O2s. I'm still looking for O2s. 3 and a 7. Alright, so finally I've got some O2s. So looks like my first O2 is around packet 67. So let me back up a little bit. Packet 65, so I went too far. Okay, somewhere around in there. So it takes roughly 1 second for the system to recognize the weight, and we'll just call it 3.5 seconds for it to declare the seat's empty. Maybe a good piece of information to know if you get a complaint of the light. If a customer complains that the light's not working properly, if you really wanted to get down in the weeds this far and measure this thing out. But this stuff just fascinates me to no end. Like I said, I don't know what this data packet means. I'm not even sure. In fact, I'm almost positive this is not UART communication. I think it's more along the lines of a K-line. But within the software, we don't have the software. I don't have it in Pico 6 to decode K-line, and sometimes you can get away with using this. There again, I am not using this data for the diagnosis. The diagnosis was a bad connection. This is simply playing, kind of after hours, a little insight into my world, especially when it comes to PicoScope. But it's nice to have a scope that has the power to be able to do this. Is it something you do every day? Probably not. Kind of neat to be able to, you know, reverse engineer some of this stuff and look into it. But that was kind of fun. I learned a lot about the system. The system's been around for a long time. I've repaired this system before, whether it be recalls or reprograms or, you know, seat sensors getting broken because people stuff umbrellas and Lord knows what else under their seats. But this is the first time I've ever put a scope on this signal, and I'm glad I did. It's the only way I learn. Man, I got to get my hands dirty. I was the type of kid growing up, if I didn't hurt myself, I didn't learn. Telling me no wasn't the answer. Getting hurt is what got me to where I am. So I pull the scope out. I look at stuff. I may not know what I'm looking at, but it's cool stuff. But that's about it. I'm going to quit rambling. I've used enough of you guys' time. So if you like the little extracurriculars, let me know. Just want to stick to the case study. Hey, this is what I found. This is what I did to fix it. That's cool too. If you like the combo of both. Once I get on here, it's hard to get me to shut up. But on that note, I'm shutting up. You guys have a good evening. Thanks for watching.